So welcome back. I see some people trickling back in. I'm going to share my screen, and forgive me as I see some people trickling. Welcome, Christine. Thank you all for being back here. Super lovely. I hope to take the next about hour, about 45 minutes, to run through maybe some of the Python software 101 topics that I feel that we really flew through and are really fair game when interviewing for any position at any level of the technical stack, whether it be from the visualization side all the way down to pure engineering and ETL stuff. So what I have done is put together a really little repo. I hope to continue working on this project kind of in parallel with the presentations that have come up until this point, and really use it as an example of how engineering full applications should be thought of. You know, the projects are really intentionally put together to show what the entire chronology of data acquisition all the way down to visualization is really going to look like. And I think they did a really good job. So talking to the administrators, we felt that the most valuable way to run review sessions was me essentially do the projects alongside the class. So I've prepared this repo all the way down through the ETL project. And it's really just going to take maybe about 20 minutes, half hour to talk about the Python file handling stuff as it relates to any language. I don't want to be specific about Python. Really just want to talk about kind of what different data types are going to look like. Kind of file handling, data handling is a really good interview question. I have some data and we need to clean it up in some fashion in order to begin visualizing it. And obviously, as we covered visualization today, I hope to update this repo for our next review session to include some visualizations, as we'll see with our projects going forward. And obviously, if there's anything you guys are really interested in, please just shout them out. And I'm really happy to tailor this toward anything that is immediately valuable on your guys' end as well. So thank you all for being here. And we went with a Kaggle open data set. I really love language processing. It's a lot of what I do when I'm not in this class. So we thought this was a really good example of a ton of common language that's in the world. If you don't want it in this repo, and no need to add additional workflow on your guys' end, I don't want this to be a technical burden. I really just want to keep this open forum. You guys ask questions. Comments, any programming 101 type questions that you feel we flew through. Welcome back, Mr. Carl. Any programming type questions that you feel we've flown through, especially as it relates to more exotic type data rather than just numbers popping up on a screen. I really like working with text data. It's really kind of the merger between math and humanity, and really is the bleeding edge of visualization right now. How do we picture word data other than just reading it top to bottom? So Mr. Carl, anyone that missed maybe the first couple minutes, I intend to use this repository, which you guys are welcome to. It's open. You guys are welcome to go to it, use it as your own. I did post it in the general announcements channel. I hope to be able to work on this project in parallel with the project submissions that you have. So I'm back, a couple more people. I will be working on this repository in parallel with the project submissions that you guys have. And up until this point, the last project submitted was this ETL project. So hopefully going to use today to show programming fundamentals that we maybe flew through. I'm using Python as the language, but I don't want to be language specific. If you guys have JavaScript questions, or hey, here's a language I might be interested in for my workflow, I'm happy to use the concepts to talk about it in that language instead. Python tends to be the most English, but we can do any of the things we're going to talk about today in any of the languages that we've covered, and even some that we haven't. So using this Kaggle data set, it's a bunch of songs from a bunch of artists. So the data raw looks like this, all the way from, Dr. Seuss, some things that are, some things that are not, his work or the title. There was a lot of back and forth in the language world of, are titles relevant? Do we treat them separately? Outcome of that was, if we group enough things together, the statistics will handle the outcome, like the fashion in which the author names their pieces is indicative of what is within it. So one thing that is fundamental, as we're going to talk about ETL, which is as far as I've got this project. I will be building this repo in parallel with the project submissions, was getting data from a unrefined fashion, like dirty. We see, symbols. We know that capital WE is different than lowercase we in programming. So there's a need to clean the data. Not only do we want it cleaned, we want it in a database, as I hope we've covered in the last few months. So we will get this class into machine learning and visualization eventually. So I do plan on give a lay of the land. I plan on taking this repository to a place where we can start to ask machine learning type questions, like what makes for good lyrics, what makes for bad lyrics. How about if I want a machine to generate some lyrics for me? It'd be, a fun auto poetry project, as well as some visualization about language data, which is kind of the bleeding edge of language research at this point. How do I visualize data over and above just reading it top to bottom? Because obviously we can just read all of these, but our memories aren't that good. We'll forget stuff we read at the beginning. So maybe we want some visuals to tell us what's going on with data and with different artists. What do the difference in artists tell me about their style? Does Bob Marley really have a different style than Johnny Cash? Maybe really have a different style than anyone else you see here. This was, again, just a Kaggle data set. I have no preference. I know what music I like. You guys know what music you like. I went with the Kaggle data set. This is what was available there.
That's all their lyrics. It's like jammed together in the file. That's cool.
Totally. Kaggle is great. Kaggle is fantastic. Really, a lot of people went to a lot of different sources to push a bunch of types of information in one in one repository where a lot of different smart people can get at centralized data, which is often the hardest part of machine learning and modeling and visualization, is even just having a clean data source. So as far as machine learning, I can say that a huge part, arguably 90% of the work in language processing is going to be allocated toward pre-processing that data. That's that transform step in export, transform, load. So we're going to grab that data from somewhere. I grabbed it from Kaggle. We'll see how I work with APIs a little bit down the road. I do want to use this as a time for anyone to cover any programming fundamental questions. How do I work with different data types? How do I work with APIs? How do I work with files all living on a machine? They're all good questions that we can do with a programming language. I chose Python for this project specifically because it's the most English and easiest to talk about. However, anything we can do in one language, we can do in JavaScript, we can do in any of the languages you guys might have heard or be interested to work with. Happy to take anything I've written in Python and talk about how it would be implemented in any of the other languages. No problem. So I will say from a language processing perspective, context of this problem is assuming that I want to do some generation, eventually do some language machine learning models, and as well as some of the visualization. The first thing I'm looking at with this data, I asked two questions. I asked the question, is burnin' here, is that the same as burnin' without an apostrophe at the end? And especially things like uppercase I, is that really different than lowercase I? My conclusion was no, they should be treated the same. And we've maybe have seen that before. Every language implements a dot lower method where it takes all uppercase letters and makes it lower. That immediately reduces the amount of variance of the information. We talked about variance in statistics by taking every uppercase variable, every uppercase string, and reducing it to its lowercase counterpart. We immediately reduce the amount of variance present in the data set. So there's less entropy, which is the amount of chaos in data. So by reducing everything to lowercase and by removing things like that apostrophe, we will reduce the amount of entropy that we have to work with. We can produce more powerful models with less data. Typically with higher entropy data, like photos and videos are very high entropy. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of variance between what they could possibly be. There will be the need for more and more and more and more data to account for that. So
that's sometimes called cardinality instead of entropy. Like, is cardinality another word that's for that?
Cardinality describes the directionality of the entropy. So entropy is actually a heat transfer thermodynamics word of what direction is the chaos going.
Okay.
Because if you think about a firecracker, it's like it has a central point and it explodes in different directions. So if we're talking about, because machine learning, we need all this qualitative data, all these strings to be in a numerical space, so we can start to do calculus on it. We can start to say, hey, the big outcome of linear algebra on words. Google just came out with a BERT model, and OpenAI just came out with a third version of theirs, which they trained over asinine amount of data, like 2 billion internet pages or something. And the big linear algebra outcome that they arrived at was statistically significant derivations of like king minus man plus woman equals queen. So we want algebraic operations to work in a word space, where literally algebra between different words will arrive us at algebra of other words. And we want addition, we want addition and multiplication to work, because that's what makes, and addition is negative subtraction, multiplication is inverse division. So we really want addition and multiplication to work on words, because that's what the foundation of linear algebra is. And that's what the foundation of machine learning is, because we need to be able to do some gradient descent methods, which is basically finding optimalities between our models. So we'll get into that in the machine learning. But for time being, I wanted to know, what is the lowest entropy representation of my data? How clean is as clean as I can make this data? And from a lyric generation perspective, I wanted to know what rhymes. I wanted to know what words rhyme. So instead of doing that a math linear algebra machine learning way, we actually just used our lovely rhyming API. So we can talk about API calls today. And first I wanted to clean the data. So those are the two kind of Python programming fundamentals I want to talk about today: is cleaning data, making API calls, and loading it into a database. So here's my original data I downloaded from Kaggle. Here is what I wanted the data to look like on the cleaned side. I didn't want new lines, I didn't want uppercase, and I didn't want any apostrophes. I wanted ILL to be that. It is wrong when we think that ILL is ill. However, it is worth being wrong there in order to shrink the variance in more than half. So we have to choose where we're going to be wrong. Things like lowercase I should stay as lowercase I, because we reduce the information significantly, where we can model better and keep our data compact. Especially when we saw other things like ain't should be, and we can do further. It's called stemming in language processing, but that's all I wanted. I wanted words that I can feed into an API, specifically our rhyme API. And especially things rhyme, ill, I'll, both kind of rhyme with the same thing. So when we talk about lyric generation, they'll both rhyme with the same thing, even if they don't make even if they don't make sense how you and I think about English. And that's a different knob that will turn in the machine learning side eventually. So to generate this cleaned data folder, obviously they're one-to-one correspondent. My thinking when I went to clean the data is I had a config file. Obviously, you guys are welcome to obviously you guys are free to, load this. I am using Postgres on the database side. So I have an artists and a words table. My artist table looked like this. I was a little redundant where I put the clean lyrics right alongside the unclean lyrics and do things like strip out new lines. Like everywhere here is a new line. Life, I wanted lowercase. So I wanted life to only be in one form. We know that every language is case sensitive. So I put the raw lyrics and the clean lyrics in an artist table. And I also had a words table to analyze things at the words level of granularity. So that was how I think about things relating, is lyrics are composed of words. And although these are, we have some that are 2 words, quote unquote, there's still some creative queries that we can do to join that within itself. So we'll see how these get generated also, kind of where my thinking of actually API processing is. But very first things first, I wanted the data that I got from Kaggle. I wanted it in a form where it was all lowercase and there was nothing but A through Z letters. It was my very first thought process. So to do that, I built myself a clean function. This is me thinking about the lyrics. This is me feeding an entire artist of lyrics at a time. So obviously, please interrupt me as I'll talk about my thought process as I went through this. Hopefully use this as an example to teach Python, teach file handling, teach eventually API calls. And if there's anything that we really glossed over at the beginning of class, please let's use this as a time to touch up on that. And obviously, as it relates to JavaScript, those should be almost interchangeable at this point. And when we get to the visualization side of this, I will add some JavaScript to this repository. So over here, these are the libraries I'm going to use. Num to words is just something I found that takes things like the number 42 and gives me 42 as a string. Just that's 100% of what it does. Basically, I here, so line by line, right away, I want there to be no new lines. I take my input lyric string. This is my thinking of how I'm going to take the block of text that is raw from Kaggle. I want to get rid of all the new lines. So I replace new lines, which is a /n, with a space. I also saw a fair amount of dashes. I didn't want those either. I wanted to make those their own 2 words. So if I saw 2 words hyphenated, I want them as their own words. And then I lowercased all the words, and then I split. This split takes a string and it turns it into a list. A Python list, a JavaScript array, however you want to think about it, it's each word separated into something I can iterate. Clean lyrics is going to be that outcome. Exactly. Now I'm going to process each word at a time. Often the point of having something in a format where we can iterate is to iterate it. So for every word, I want to clean specifically that word. If there's any characters, so what this line is doing is if there's any characters, this ALNUM is a Python string method. I could test that out real quick down here. So ABC is alphanumeric is true. However, 2 is alphanumeric is true. However, so I'm testing if it's a letter or a number. Dash is not a letter or a number. So for every single character in the word, I'm testing if that character is a letter or a number. Because I have my number handler down here, I'm testing it if it's a letter or a number, and then I'm building an array out of those, and then I am joining those back into a word, because this .join will return me a string of the cleaned word, as my variable naming convention would imply. I don't care if there's an exception there. That's what this pass keyword is for. I definitely just want to finally clean lyrics append that word to maintain the order of the original lyrics. And then what this does is return the array joined by a space. So this was me defining the function. Where I use it, I'll show you down here. This is me iterating every single file in my data path. So that's my data folder. This just gives me that whole, every file here as a iterable. The artist name, I can right strip off text. And for me entering it with SQL convention, I wanted the dashes that were originally to be snake case underscores. In the file path, I wrote to a variable, Python namespaces are your friend. When in doubt, just build yourself a namespace. Obviously, I can do this in less lines, but I want to be explicit about what I'm doing every step along the way. File name is what I can iterate here. Artist name is what I build by stripping off .text from these and replacing the dashes with underscores. Bob Dylan, I wanted just as Bob Dylan joined with an underscore. And file path is the entire data path, which was literally just that for my config file. Trying to be best practices, show kind of coding 101, how I think about ETL in Python. Here's where I open the file path. I'm aliasing it as lyrics. This is that opened file path. Filepath.read gives me the lyrics as a string. Here is where I actually pass that lyric string into the function that I defined up here. That gives me that lovely lyric string back. Now here is our lovely database insert. All in one line, I have my database connection. My engine comes from my config file. This is all the SQL Alchemy stuff I put in a config file. So my engine is available, my artist table is available, and my words table is available. Here, I just want to execute my connection, meaning that artist table, I want to insert the values of artist name, Kaggle lyrics, and the Kaggle lyrics cleaned. Notice that here is the input into the clean function, and here is the output into the out of the clean function. A few different ways that people prefer to do that. I like the primary key being first, and then some trailing commas here. I have some print statements. Let me know what's going on. I could definitely, productionalize. I would definitely just, delete those things live. And also after the database insert, I also want to write it as a file to talk about not only Python SQL Alchemy stuff, but also normal file handling. So I want to insert it into the database. I also want to write it as a file. Here's where I define the file name. Clean data path artist name .text is the name. And in write mode, which is open that file as in write mode, I alias it and I write the entire cleaned file. That's where all these come from. One line generates a whole folder of lovely information. I tell myself what's going on. Productionalized, I would delete those. And I bury that all in a try, except, and finally, I want to dispose of my engine. Pretty lovely. That allows this entire cleaned data folder to populate, all in basically a few lines, as well as over here, having my artist cleaned because I replaced the dash with underscore, keeping SQL convention. Here are the Kaggle lyrics, and here are the cleaned Kaggle lyrics. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Obviously, always going to be a little bit of errors, but we're trying for, 50% to 90% to 99%, and we will let the statistics handle the rest. So at this point, I have my artist table populated with lyrics and the clean lyrics. The second question I asked was, how do the words relate? What causes one word to be close to another word, as well as what do the variation between words used mean about the artist style? So, question I start asking is, what if I treat words as granular in and of themselves? Obviously, things like this are composite words, but there are SQL queries. Again, we just want the table to be joinable to answer every question that we can possibly ask about the data, about our situation at hand. The questions I were asking was, what do the word choices suggest about the artist style? And what is maybe a better or worse song, as well as some machine learning generative stuff down the line, being able to generate lyrics in the style of different artists, as well as visualize how different artists are using words. Every artist probably uses the and a. Those aren't very unique words. However, there are a few words that are unique to artists. I'll get into the API calls I made. I do think it's really lovely that I have the integer of how many syllables were in the word available also. Abdication has 4 syllables. So we have a lot of words here, and I can always get information. I'll show you reminder of SQL 101. Basically, it just tells me how many are there. I have 67,000 words right now. Words, including composite words. However, we can do a self-join to make those unique.
And those are repeated, that 67,000, is that distinct, or is that, these are, you didn't filter?
Because word is my primary key in this table.
Okay.
So we do have words like, a bed here, lyrically made up. Nobody holds artists to the standard of using real English words. If you've ever listened to music, you've heard words that are more phonetic than they are look-upable in the dictionary. But most of these are found in the dictionary. So, abroad, 2 syllables. We'll see how we get these and how Python works with APIs right now. So the second question I asked is, in answering both of those questions, and this is really, eventually I'll do some Flask stuff. We're not going to do really Flask today. Just know that we can, define some endpoints to do some stuff. I really only took this project up until the ETL project, just to talk about programming 101, different data types, how Python handles working with files, working with the network. And the network that I chose to work with here, it is the rhyme API. So if we remember what this looked like, hope down here, hope we remember our lovely request library. We have this get, and the thing that I wanted to start doing is getting what words rhymed, and not from a probabilistic standpoint of just scraping through the lyrics, because that's pretty tough, but literally from we have this lovely API available, so why not use it and just know things for sure that rhyme. So here's where we get into ETL, grabbing data from two different sources, one being Kaggle, two being from an API, putting them in each of their own tables and starting to do joins between them to answer questions, do some cool stuff. So we still remember our create engine thing over here. I actually could have just imported that from config. I think I'll do that instead. Show you kind of how I clean up my own code as I kind of go through. I want to import the engine, and then that negates the need for that line at all. This is how I think about making my own code. I also want to import the words table because it's available there, and I do want to connect within the script to be explicit about that, of where I am actually connecting to the engine and where I'm disposing of the engine. So what I'm asking myself at this point when I'm running through is, what words do I want to check for rhymes? I could, just type some stuff. However, I do know that I have some words from my artists already, especially in my cleaned data. Why not just start with those words? Why not check for all of those? Let's see what the API says about what those rhyme with. So my kind of Python convention is do all my imports up top, build all my objects that are going to be referenced by every function below, write my functions, and use my very last function as my kind of entry point into the script. That way I can be really concise with this whole file is doing only this part. Then I can reference this main file, kind of my entry point into run. And within that, be retrospective about every file, every function that it is referencing. So my main entry point into this file, when I run python etl.py, is going to be running this blast off function, which really just runs my ETL job. That's pretty conventional in ETL stuff. I use this as an example of how we can either pass parameters to a function or default to none. I could either give it an artist name. Otherwise, I can just check my database for words where me searching it is false. So I have to initialize it somehow. So I want to pass in an artist name. I did that the very first time by passing in Dr. Seuss. But either way, all we're doing in this blast off function is getting a set of words, a unique group of words. If I pass in Dr. Seuss, it's going to give me every unique word that Dr. Seuss has used as this set. Here we get it as a list. The commonality is that they can be iterated. In this fashion, word for word in getting all of the words. I use word 0 because when I use fetch all, I go over to the word table and it will give me a bunch of tuples. So 0, 1, 2, 3 will be returned. And I only want the word because that's what I actually want to pass to the API. This is the bread and butter of what is going on, which is kind of how I write my functions backward. I write exactly what I want to happen. And then I know that I want to get rhymes. In my get rhymes, I know I want to update SQL. I do a little bit of commenting on exactly what's going on, but the good convention that I've seen a lot of people prefer in Python is kind of bottom up. You know, here's all my imports, here's what I have to work with, here's the functions I have to work with, and then bottom up. You know, I'm trying to run my main function, I'm catching any errors, and then finally, I'm making sure that all my resources are shut down. So within this, I'm generating a set of words to get, and then I'm getting rhymes for that word. I jump right above to check what's actually happening for each word. I'm hitting that API in the same way that I've just seen. That actually gives me the rhyme JSON back from that API. There's this big object that we've seen. I can also get specifically the words out of that. So not only do I want the JSON blob, I also want all of the rhymes specifically because that is where I want to capitalize on the nested types of Postgres and the ability to have a array type column. So these were initialized. I hope we are good with our SQL table initializations at this point. These are initialized by SQL. They're available. Anything you want to do, if you join a company, these will already be initialized. If you have an ETL project, you initialize the data structure that you want. And we know that SQL Postgres specifically can join where one primary key is within another column. So one word being within Kaggle lyrics cleaned in the artist table is going to be the relation between these, where a word can exist here and a word can exist in the lyrics cleaned text. Pretty cool, pretty cool. And that's where the core of the math is going to come from. How I'm thinking about it over here is formatting my URL string. This is how Python handles network requests. I'm getting all of the words as a list from this big blob because we have more things going on than just word. Word is this key. It has number of syllables, and those are the two keys available when I use this endpoint of the API. And then I want to insert those into words. The two scenarios of when I insert into my words table is if it's in the table already. Remember, create, read, update, delete. There are two ways that this can possibly change our SQL table. It could either be a word in there already that we have seen already, or it's a brand new word that the API says rhymes that the artist has never actually used. So it really expands our knowledge base really quickly, which is a beautiful part about APIs. We can incorporate a lot of knowledge that we don't have off the top of our head or off data that we can just pull. So right away, I want to check this word. which is the word that I'm rhyming right now, because we're still within this loop. We're still in words of all the words I get. I want to check if the word is already in the database. And to do that, I need to make a GET request to the database. So I check if this word is in my database. Is this result? Select from my words table where my word is my word in the table. I have this word key right here, word in the words table. I want to check if it's there. And here's my Python ternary. So I'm going to return my result if there's a result. Otherwise, if there's nothing that exists, this will evaluate to false, and I'll just return none. Write it to that variable. That's where I get to do my logic of if not existing rhymes, because I wrote it to that variable, be as self-documenting as possible. Python namespaces are your friends. So I'm checking if there's any rhymes. If there's not any rhymes, I just want to create a record. That's my create in create, read, update, delete. So my difference is if the word is not in the table already, I want to create a record. However, if it is, I want to update the record. And that's going to be my branching logic in my ETL data stuff. That's pretty common, is I either want to create a record or I want to update an existing record. Your bank does that all the time. If you deposit money, you're either an existing bank user and they're going to update your account. And if they don't have a record for you, they're going to create an account. So this is a pretty common pattern. I either want to check that. So if it's my job is easy if it's not there, because I just insert what I already have. I have some of these defaults in order that I can be specific about where about what information I want to gather. I have this searched to talk about a good design pattern for ETL stuff is if I actually hit the API, because I only want to hit the API once and only once for each word to be efficient. Sometimes APIs cost money. So I want to only make this true if I have searched the API for that word. That's why in this point, I have searched true here. But if now I just iterate to be very complete about every word I've seen. And in this port, searched is not true because I haven't seen it. And that's where this if else logic comes in, which is create or update. Now on the update side, I'm saying I have seen the word already. Existing rhymes to, I could be maybe a little explicit about what this is. Existing rhymes to, index 2. Remember, existing rhymes, if I get a record from the table, it's going to return me a tuple. For my table is 5 elements because my word table has word, syllable, 4. 0th element is word, first index is syllable, second index is rhyming words, third index is if it was searched. So, that being said, I want index 2 because I want all of the existing rhymes. I want the set of them because I want this to be a set operation. This is the OR operator for a set. I'll show that really quickly here. Sets are really powerful in Python. If I have the set of A, B, C, I can, I can write that to that. And then BCD is BCD. So now I have that set, ABC and BCD. See that they are unordered. Doesn't matter how I defined it, these are unordered. The difference is that if I do A, B, C, or B, C, D, I get all of them, they combine them. The other operation is A, B, C, and B, C, D. We should think about these like Venn diagrams where they only give me the common elements. So sets are very powerful in Python where I can get the elements that are within both or only contained in both. So for my example, I wanted my knowledge base to grow. I wanted to get the ones that I already knew about or I just found out, and I wanted to combine those and overwrite the record. So that's exactly what I do here is updated rhymes that I know about. I want to take what I did know about, which is that, or everything I just learned about, and I wanted a type list. That's what my database is expecting. So I want to update the table where my table word is this word. That's a true false evaluation, SQL Alchemy stuff. And I want to either use my syllable count if I actually pass the syllable count, like I know one from the API. Otherwise, there was probably one already in there that I'm going to reuse. That's just if else. Rhyming words, I want to overwrite whatever was there to whatever I learned in the meantime. And I want to update, which is this searched. If this is true, it'll write true. So it's if one evaluates the true and one evaluates the false. That's why I put an or in the middle. So I know that I definitely hit that word in the API already once. We want to use the API once and only once per word. And that is what populates something like, that is what populates this words table. And we can put on a server and run for a while. And that is, as far as ETL, and I hope covered some of the Python stuff up to this point. The following review sessions will be a little more fun when I do some machine learning and some visualization on this data. But that is my thought process of taking some Kaggle data, some API calls, combining it into one location, and making sure it is beautiful and cleaned and available for some cool math and visualization down the line. Good, bad? Thumbs
Amazing,
up?
amazing. I have nothing to say. I mean, it just, I probably followed about 80% of what you, but it's really cool. Very clean and very, very cool.
And I'm definitely recording, so this stuff is available. We have about another 5 minutes right now. If there's any topics that you guys would love to talk about or would help, anything really pertinent in your guys' life, happy to give any bandwidth to things like that we want to talk about. And hopefully I have enough bandwidth to make this more cool down the line, in line with both of your next projects. However, I hope this was a pretty good refresher on control structures within Python, file handling within Python, ETL stuff, working with APIs in a database, and different variable types. That's a commonality and a really common fail point in any coding language. Doesn't matter if it's VBA, doesn't matter if it's JavaScript. People thinking you're working with one type of data and having a different type of data is always going to be a tough part of programming. But we are standing on the shoulders of giants, and a lot of intelligent people have put together a lot of really, really great tools up until this point, and we just get to use them. So anything weird or abstract? We do have about 3 minutes left. I did a lot of talking, and I want to make sure that anything fuzzy from the last 3 months, whether it be current homework or any topics that you find more valuable in your life, I'm happy to give any discussion time to, whatever's helpful for you guys. I guess.
Can you pull up the config py file? I think I need to do more of that. It's really nice to have it, most of that connectivity defined there. That's nice.
Definitely. I've seen this work well, having the engine defined here. You do need to fill this part out. Data path can point to anywhere. It can point to an internet location also, if the stuff is coming from an internet location. And the engine coming from the config file, as well as your artist and as well as your individual tables, has been nice, keeping the individual files a lot lighter. And that's good Python, is beautiful Python. I don't make the claim that I write the most beautiful code you'll ever see. However, it is impressive the amount you can do in a few lines in a language like this. So we are kind of blessed to be at the point where like a network request is, just one line.
Yeah, I've read that, Python, is based off of C++, and it takes about 30% of the code it would take to write it in C++. To write it in Python, you reduce significantly. So it's a perfect example of it.
Yeah, I've worked in Java shops, and I would say it was at least 5 times as long to write any of that. Sorry, I heard, I think someone out there.
Oh, that's okay. How did you get the syllable count? Is that just...
That was from the API.
It's from the API? Oh, okay.
Totally. Yeah,
Okay.
nothing syllables, totally. That is
okay.
Yeah.
I see. All right.
Yeah, work with what you got. When in doubt, store it. You might use it eventually. More data is probably better for the time being. Everyone's so hot to try on, big data. So if you got it, store it. Might be useful eventually. Kind of useful to watch, string and number type data side by side. It is 4 o'clock. Thank you guys so much. We've eaten up a lot of our Saturday together at this point. If there's any questions, seriously, anything I could do to be helpful on any of your guys' end, please just reach out. Happy to help however I can. This stuff is available. The repository is out there. I posted it in Slack. I will be continue to working in parallel with your guys' projects, and seriously, just reach out any way I can be helpful as you guys are going through this. It's not intuitive the first time for anyone. It's like a time under tension. The more time you allocate toward this, the more easy it gets, and you kind of look back and think how like, oh wow, I was really dumb a week ago, and now I know everything, and then that kind of continues every week. So. Wait.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
In the ETL .py, you probably went over this. What does the numbers represent on the brackets on line 27, 32, and 34? Yeah, those.
Yeah, that's a great question. So existing rhymes. I like tools where I double click and I know that I defined it up here.
Yeah.
So I know that it's coming from here, which is this select statement from my words table. And I want to just get a single row. Sql ensures that when I select a row, I'm selecting the entire row. So when I go to my words table, words 0 is word index, because it's a tuple. If I select that whole row, where if I here, I'll write, I think it's because we got to remember that it's compiling into SQL. Select that from words where word equals, I saw absurd. So it's compiling into something like that and returning that tuple. So it's returning that entire tuple, which has an index 0, an index 1, an index 2, and an index 3.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
0, 1.
So
Oh,
I
got
did
it.
it a few different times, and I could have been more explicit, maybe should have been, and said like, you know, that is existing rhymes list, and then actually maybe I'll keep that and I'll be really explicit about what's going on. And then down here, existing syllables count, which I can define up here. So I could be as explicit in defining these as I want. I just kind of put them in here to be really computationally efficient. So was searched. Sounds like a good variable name for that. And this is the way that I could be very explicit. And I think I do that one more spot down here. I do word 0, and that's just in order that I can do this all in one command right there. And I do that exactly the same because I db execute another fetch all command right here. This is going to return that that list of tuples. So when I iterate it, I actually need to get in the 0th element of each tuple, because it is all compiling back into SQL like that and returning 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 elements indexed 0 to 3.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's every programming language will pretty much do that. JavaScript and Python both have iterables starting at index 0.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Great question. Yeah. There's, how are the rest of you guys doing? Let's see.
My family's picking me and figuring out dinner plans.
Yeah, we've taken a lot of our Saturdays together at this point, so I could stop this recording whenever you guys are feeling comfortable. I'm happy to take questions, until you guys get bored of me, and we can reconvene on Tuesday.
Awesome. And this is in your GitHub, right?
Yes, it is available. I posted the link in Slack. It's publicly available repo.
Okay.
Clone it, beat it up, help yourself. What's mine is yours.
Yeah, I'm going to start using that config py in solutions. I love it. So
Yeah, great. It's helpful however
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, happy Saturday. Anything else comes up, please just message me. You know where to find me.
Awesome. Thank you for doing this, Theo.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here.
Very interesting.
Awesome.
I thought I thought I was pretty good at this. Now I'm like, you took it up a notch for us.